Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Vega, and I am running for Congress in the Bronx in the 15th Congressional District. As you can see, I look a little bit different, not in my usual setup. I'm actually just in a different corner than I normally would be. We have the Edgar Poe portrait right behind me, and of course, our banner, Jose Vega for Congress, Power, not Force. And I actually got an insight, more of an insight into exactly what that means, and I will tell you about that now. Actually, I know that there's going to be a lot of new people who are tuning into this live stream. In fact, I know that over 100 new people have donated and contributed to our campaign since last Friday. That's right, it was 1 week ago, last Friday, where articles came out attacking me in the Jerusalem Post. And what they did was they ran the exact same article word for word in 4 different news outlets, and it made it all the way to Budapest, through B'nai Budapest, to the Times of Israel, JNS, which is the Jewish News Syndicate, and the Jewish News Agency, and the Jewish Telegraph as well. They ran the exact word-for-word article. As a result, many people have decided to support our campaign, have shared around our statements. We have gained over 4,000 new Instagram followers. We've also gained about 2,000 new X followers as well, and our social media views have continued to grow. You may also be here because other content creators have decided to put out endorsements. I welcome you. And what we do here usually every Friday is we read a story, usually by Edgar Poe, one of his contemporaries, or something that would complement that. Now, I had started this show by talking about having an insight to power, not force. I've actually been reading recently a lot about Milton, Paradise Lost, and on this idea of power. And one of the reasons I've been doing this, of course, is actually because there's a 17-year-old who's been coming to the office, and he asked this question, if God is real, why does he allow bad things to happen? And it's an interesting question, because how do you begin to answer that, right? If God can intervene in events and he chooses not to, well, then he's cruel, right? And if God can't intervene in events, then he's not all powerful. This is a supposed paradox. This is a paradox that actually gets taken up in Milton through the eyes of Satan. And one of the arguments that Satan makes about God is that that God rules arbitrarily and through force. Because God can do all things, he is arrogant. However, God, in his monologue about Adam, how he foresaw that Adam would fall, talks about the concept of free will. He gave Adam the ability to stand tall and to fall. That's a direct quote from Milton. And he says, either he must die or justice must die. These are 2 quotes that he says. And that's interesting, because God rules on reason, not force. And that reason is where he gets power. God could intervene, but he chooses not to, because he created something called moral law and reason. And if God were just to forgive Adam, well, then what would there be the point of justice? God gave all of us reason and creativity to solve our problems, and that is where we derive our power from. That is real power. The ability to snap your fingers and kill thousands of children in Gaza is cowardice. To kill people in the name of God is cowardice. And so that is what some of what we mean when we say power, not force. And so here we are, we find ourselves in this campaign in the Bronx with many new people now tuning in. You see that they've tried to diminish us. They tried to squash us even before petitioning begins. And as a result, a greater good has had to overtake the greater evil, which was all of you who decided to come and support us and rally around our campaign. So as a result of that, however, we have not slowed down. We have been trying their best to put out videos each day for you. I've been interacting with many of you in the comments and the like section. And so now we are entering a territory that, honestly, I think none of us are familiar with. It's also a completely new playing field. And this year, people are saying, many political commentators are saying that this will be a litmus test for what people actually want. Well, I would posit to you that I think every citizen wants the same thing: clean air and a bright future, and to make sure that everybody has the ability to develop themselves to their fullest creative potential. And what that means is we can't solve problems just locally. I'm not just fixated on just the 15th congressional district. I want to make sure that every country on this planet has access to energy. And I want to solve energy poverty. I want to build nuclear fission and fusion reactors in every community that needs it, so that any child in the planet can unravel their creative potential. And that's something that gets taken up every Friday on the International Peace Coalition call. Now, I can't tell you what happened on today's call because I wasn't on. However, I know that we will be playing a clip from Garland Nixon, someone who was on, and Dennis Speed may be able to tell us a little bit more, which brings me to my segue, bringing in Dennis Speed. Dennis, are you there? Can you hear
us? Yeah, I'm hanging out here. How about you, Jose? You seem to be hanging out too.
All right. I'm also trying to make it here, but go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, well, they say, you know. Okay, well, much has happened this week, and much has been happening. Jose's campaign, as he said, seems to have scored a direct hit in the land of the immoral, the land of the unjust. You know, it's way beyond Zionism, which is a derivation of something. And everybody knows from the time that we've now seen, you know, so we have a selected release of these files being called Epstein files. But if you think about it, what would happen if the people in the Epstein files had their files pulled? And we got already 6 million pages of this stuff. And of course, none of this is the videos. None of this was actually the recordings, the audio recordings. And while people are being led in a certain direction, there's something very important that was pointed out by Garland Nixon. Now, Nixon is a podcaster, yes, but he describes his background, and we're going to let him go ahead and speak for himself. Why this is part of what we're referring to around Edgar Poe is because Poe was the inventor of what was called the detective story, later called the detective story, which was sort of is not his name for it. He called them tales of ratiocination. We could say tales of reasoning. And Jose just said something about this issue of free choice of the will. I only would make one comment in response to what he said, which is that if a God, let's say a divine presence, which was omniscient and also omnipotent, were to control what people do so that the outcome was always good, then how could they be free? You know, you say that animals, through their instinct, seem often to mimic or imitate the characteristics of people. And certainly, you know, if you've seen animals or have interacted with them, they often have distinct personalities. But the thing that does not exist among animal species is species consciousness. They may be conscious of being cats or dogs, but not in relationship to species of other entities. They do not pass along the experience of their having lived to the animals that come later. Beavers, in other words, build dams the same way they do now, they did thousands of years ago. So it's no different. And the difference with the human race is that the idea of the immortal or the infinite, people say, well, that's not real because it's only in the mind. But if it is in the mind, then in fact, it exists within the mind. So when we talk about 2 trillion galaxies, for example, and that these are infinite areas of space, and the cosmicists, as they're called, say, well, what that shows you is that the notion that there's some being that has willed that people are supposedly the caretakers of this vast domain, that's an absurdity. I mean, first of all, because you can't even talk about exceeding the space of a single galaxy. Some people, like Michio Kaku, the physicist, point out that you have 3 stages that you'd have to reach before you could talk about actual civilization. He says the first stage, the most primitive stage, would be the ability to travel around a solar system, the system of the sun. The second stage would be to be able to travel around the galaxy. And the third would be to be able to travel between galaxies. And his point is that until you have mastered that level of the ability to both navigate and, in effect, uh, uh, transform, I'm not going to use the word manipulate because that's not really the idea, but transform that space to make it inhabitable for not merely the human species, but animal species and so forth as a whole, bringing life to other planets or discovering life on other planets and interacting with that. Until you can do that at the level of a solar system, you have no civilization. Then the second stage, the galactic, and then the third, the intergalactic. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's an interesting hypothesis. But that idea, being able to even think that way, to think that thought, requires a notion of human identity, which goes way beyond anything that any animal species we know of is capable of thinking or even disposed to think. And so the ability to reverse that, or to think the opposite of that, and to do the opposite of that, is a necessary component of free will. So it doesn't mean that evil is something which it is necessary be committed, but the notion that something other than the good can be done, can be thought and can be done, is a necessary component of having free will. Nobody's telling you got to do that, but having the option to do that is an essential component of the idea of free choice of the will. So it's an important thing that should just be understood, whatever may be your theological persuasion. And what we're going to do now is to show you what Garland Nixon, who is an investigator, as he says, if you will, in the footsteps of Edgar Poe, proposed today at this meeting of the International Peace Coalition regarding Epstein.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak as always. And, yes, I'm a journalist and all of those things, but my area of expertise, my specialty, and it's critical for this particular conversation, is in law enforcement. And I did a number of things, but not the least of which being was I ran an investigations division, and I did training. I trained investigators, taught people how to investigate. So I see things as an investigative journalist and as a law enforcement investigator. And the reason I say that,
Pardon me, Garland. I'm sorry. Your volume is just a little low.
let me see, perhaps I can turn my gain up. Is that a little better?
That's a little better. Yes.
Let me turn it up more. How about now? Is it improving?
It's improving. Yes.
There we go. All right. Okay. Is this
That's
okay?
much better.
All
Much
right.
better.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I think I have it in my settings turned down a bit low. Anyway, my point is about all of that is about the Epstein stuff. And I tell you why. Because I look at the Epstein, I think that we have to, there are a number of ways to look at the Epstein release. One of them is to be, kind of upset and say, oh my gosh, they have all this power and they're doing these things and there's nothing we can do about it and we're in a terrible condition. The other way to look at it is through the eyes of an investigator. Number one, I'll say this. We have to have some level of skepticism. We have to understand that this is a controlled release, that they are going to, don't jump on everything and say, aha, I know that's true, and therefore, right? Understand that there is going to be a controlled release, and that even that some of the things that are when they are released, they will attempt to amplify some things, tamp down the other things. I think Dave, if I'm not mistaken, has something that he can put up, Dave DeBro. Hopefully. There we go. So one of the things that I thought was interesting was that Alexander Mercouris in England had a discussion on the Duran. See, I have my Duran hat on, one of my favorite programs. But he talked about the connections between Epstein and the British Crown. And I think it's particularly important for this organization because over the course of the years, this organization has been one of the groups worldwide who has presented a major focus on the British Crown and on the British Empire's input in world affairs, and has been attacked and belittled for it. But now I think we are coming to a time where, I'll put it like this, this is the time for this organization, because of the things they've been saying for so long. And now people's eyes are being opened, right? When we look at Epstein, there are a lot of what I will call investigative leads. Now, as I said, always have some level of skepticism. Would there be some things, is there going to be some things that are released that we might have to look at with a jaundiced eyes? Fair enough. But there are other things that we can see that I think are of great consequence as a result, as an example. Whenever someone tells me look in another direction, I know, okay, that's the direction I should be looking. One of the things that has happened recently, now this started 4 or 5 days ago with Sky News in Australia. And that was, they started saying, well, Epstein was actually a Russian spy, had nothing to do with Israel. Well, by saying he had nothing to do with Israel, they're also trying to say he had nothing to do with the British Crown. We look at Lord Mandelson. We look at one of the people who he was a very, very important contact of his, which was Prince Andrew, which he was friends with, worked with Prince Andrew for a long time, and that tied him directly to the royal family. And we see that in trying to steer us away from Britain, to steer us towards Russia, that tells us that we need to look back towards Britain. And who's doing it? It's not the Americans. They didn't start off that. It's the same people who started with Russiagate in the same place, in the city of London, saying, look over here for Russia. It's Donald Trump. Now they're doing it with the, what could be, I'll even add this. The fact that it's being put forward as a Peter Mandelson scandal just now again focuses on one person. This is about Mandelson. It focuses away from the real power players, which is Prince Andrew, connecting Epstein directly to the royal family. And I think for this organization, that's where we really have to, one of the places we really have to look. I also think this, and if you look at it, I mean, for God's sake, Epstein's partner was Ghislaine Maxwell. And the Maxwells are connected again to the British power elite. So I think we have to look at this as an outstanding opportunity for those of us who are looking to follow these investigative leads. And it's not hard. You know, I've often shown people on my channel how to do it. Just start clicking, just start following names, just start searching names, just start looking, and things start to show up on their own. But what we're seeing now is an instance where the cat is out of the bag. And so people, you know, there was I was on a Twitter Spaces recently with these people that did the Pizzagate thing, and they were all saying, they told us we were crazy when we said there's a worldwide group of pedophiles and they're doing all of these crazy things. And look, the conspiracy theorists have been and the crazy people have been vindicated once again. And I think that in a different way, particularly with this organization, because my experience with this organization has been there's a tremendous focus on the connections to the British Crown. And even I was skeptical at first. But the more I looked, the more I started saying they're onto something here. And now I think the Epstein I've said this oftentimes. A lot of people know that my political mentor was Paul Robeson Jr., and he's the one that actually directed me to this organization for intelligence, particularly. And one of the things that he always said was, "It's not even what you say, Garland. It's when you say it." And you can say the same thing over and over, and no one will pay attention until the time is right. Right now, the time is right. And with the Epstein, for those who don't get upset or down in the mouth about it, for those who see this for the opportunity that it is to start digging into it, to start kind of crowing a little bit and saying, "I told you so," and pointing more towards this, I think more and more people are opening their eyes to at least the possibility that those who have been pointing at the British Crown and pointing at MI6 and pointing at some of the underhanded things that have been going on, that we're at a good time. COVID, of course, was something that generated a lot of discontent and questioning of the elite ruling class. I think there are other things that can be brought up now, but I think that what we have to do as a community is pursue the investigative leads with, of course, a skeptical eye, but understanding that there's a lot there. There's a lot there. And I got to add this. Let's not forget, we only have like half of the documents. So we have to ask ourselves, gee, where's all of this other stuff? We have to keep pushing on that. We have to understand that if we can push, maybe we can get more released. And we can continue to pursue here. So I think personally, as an investigator, when you're an investigator, what do you want? You want leads. You're sitting there, any lead, you got a cold case. You're looking over anything you can to get a lead. Man, there's more leads than we could have ever dreamed of here. And so I think we have to start pursuing this leads and look at this for the great opportunity that it is, and in particular for this organization.
Okay, so that was Garland Nixon today. And Garland's very well known, particularly in Belarus, Russia, some other nations. He has a regular show in DC that is listened to by various people on Capitol Hill. Got some indication of that recently, in particular. And as with Edgar Poe, and as with what we're doing, what you do if you've got somebody who's an enemy and you think that they're part of a fabric of decadence or degeneracy or murder is you don't get scared. What you do is you focus on being able to unravel a thread, pick up a thread and unravel it. So just in terms of this, we're going to put something up by the almighty Grok, Grok engine, people go on. And some of us who are very not impressed at all, but there's sometimes these things are useful. And so in the course of Garland's discussion today, I referenced the Maxwell sisters because nobody talks about the Maxwell sisters, about Ghislaine, but they don't ever talk about her sisters. And I think we have something we put up the show. Okay, so here you have it. Yes, Ghislaine Maxwell had siblings with U.S. intelligence ties. Christine Maxwell co-founded Chiliad, providing data mining software to the FBI's counterterrorism warehouse post 9/11, enabling searches across agencies like CIA and NSA. Isabel Maxwell, another sibling, led Israeli firms ComTouch and iCognito with board roles at Perez Center for Peace and Israel Venture Network. Ties to Israel's other father, and so on. Okay, so now nobody's even bringing these people up. Now, also, Robert Maxwell was their father, and Robert Maxwell, after he accidentally on purpose fell off of his boat and was buried, had something like 7 former heads of Israeli intelligence at the funeral. Why are people attributing superhuman powers to Jeffrey Epstein, who may simply be the continuation, not merely around Israeli intelligence, by the way, but multiply connected intelligence agencies? The successor to Robert Maxwell. He's like a dump. He's a place where, or like a station, a railroad station, where there's an intersection point where a series of things come together. He's not running anything, but he's intelligent enough to know how to connect things together. He's placed in that position. He's also placed in the position to corrupt. And of course, I'm not saying, I think it's very important to say, where these people have miscalculated in the release of this stuff. Everybody's looking at the information within it. It's when you see the camaraderie among these people, including people like Noam Chomsky or Deepak Chopra or others, with not merely Epstein, but the influence and power that he was serving. He's really a conduit. Literally, think about a large intestine, and through the conduit passes the cesspool of corruption. Now, that's really what the guy was. He was not any super intelligent anything. And this is important to understand, that this is the milieu. This is where people liked to be. They were in it because they wanted to be in it. It's not a question of the particulars of this or that behavior. Not that those things should be minimized, but we're looking at something different. It was a culture. And the notion that this is somehow so powerful that it can never be stopped, that's for the cowardly. No, we're at the moment precisely when, by seeing it, its power is diminished by it being revealed. Now, this is just the beginning. And the purpose of things like the campaigns we're involved in and the reading that we do is one thing. It's all one thing. Ideas are where power actually resides, not force. The power of ideas. And that's what was able to be used, including in the creation of this country. It was created around an idea. The Declaration of Independence shows those ideas. There's a lot of research, a lot of different kinds of discussions, many, many different constitutions that existed in the different colonies of the United States that then attempted to, in various ways, conduct self-government, particularly in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, which had different charter arrangements than many of the other colonies. And so there was a much different process. While people are correctly upset about the issue of slavery and some of the other issues looked at from behind, you got to realize that the primary issue at that time was the divine right of kings. That if somebody had the power of royalty and decreed something, it was from God. And that was what was challenged and shattered in being challenged by the Declaration of Independence. So these things have to be kept in perspective from the standpoint of the impact and the way in which that process of revolution, which is written into that declaration, is supposed to be used by us now. But the problem is, if you don't have a command of language, you don't have a command of metaphor in particular, in the kind of way that an author like Edgar Poe practices it, then you can't actually be free to implement or use the freedoms that are contained, that are decreed, if you want to put it that way, in the Declaration, that are declared in the Declaration of Independence. The document doesn't give you the freedoms, nor does the Constitution. The freedoms are already there. They're unalienable from you. They can't be given to you. That's why they can't be taken away from you, because they pre-exist. That's the meaning of that phrase, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's to secure these rights. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from their just powers from the consent of the governed. that whenever any government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation upon such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall be most fit to secure their security and happiness. And goes on to say, when a long train of abuses and usurpations, like what we're seeing in the files, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design, a conspiracy, if you will, to reduce them, the people, under absolute despotism, which is what you're living in, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. So one of the reasons a lot of people are depressed in the United States now about the Epstein files is because now it's clear that it is your duty to throw off such government. And the people are not sure they want to do their duty. It's not Big Brother, which is the problem. It is Little Brother, which is the problem. So the campaign that Jose is doing and others, Diane Sare, her independent race for president, is intended to go at the real problem, which is not the decadence of these characters, but the inaction and indifference and silence of those whom they oppress. Okay, so that's what I will leave it at, Jose.
Yeah, I think we can leave it there. I will just say, starting next week, we are going to be going 90 minutes, meaning we are extending the length of what we are doing here. Usually we try to end by 7 so that people can watch what Diane Sare is doing. In fact, tonight she has a good call with farmers, and I may make a surprise appearance. I haven't decided yet if I'll do that, but definitely tune into that. But yes, starting next week, she has agreed to push back her show at 7:30, so we have more time to expand on the things that we read. So, definitely something to start tuning into next Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, yes, and we will be doing this during petitioning too. Is that right, Dennis? Is that our plan?
Well, I think I'll put it this way to everybody. We want everybody to contribute. We got a plan here. We didn't talk about this. Petitioning starts on February 24th. Everything will be done in the power of those that don't want Jose on the ballot to keep him off the ballot. And I'm not talking nice. You've seen the files, so it should be clear to you what some of these people are capable of. Yep. So everybody watching this, understand that there's 2 things we need. We need money now. We need that money for everything from security to preparing our petitions, to doing various kinds of mapping. I do not want to discuss all that. And we need people to help starting on Tuesday, February 24th. And because we're on a public channel, we're not going to talk about it too much, but we need the volunteers for day 1. Day 1. This is not the same thing of us just running independent. We will do that also. This is in the Democratic primary. And here's how this goes. If Jose is on the ballot, there are going to be debates with Richie Torres, etc. That is, there are other candidates in, and they're going to want to do that, like this Michael Blake guy, these other people. That's what we want to be able to do, was have that face-to-face confrontation. Now, if you want to get a ticket for that show, the price of that ticket is getting him on the ballot. The price of that ticket is paying, giving the money so that we can do what we have to do. Mm-hmm. That includes all kinds of things. So I just would put it like that. And if we do it right, I'm sure we'll figure out a way to do Poe at the same time as we petition.
Beautiful. All right. So I want to thank everybody for coming on again. We will see you next week. If you're somebody who's following me on social media, you'll be hearing from me and seeing different things that we are putting up practically every day. So please tune in, stay tuned, and thanks for coming.